From director Fede Alvarez comes the latest sequel, prequel, equal of Alien, entitled Alien Romulus. Alien Romulus takes place between, and I don't know if they'd really, I learned this before I went to see it, and I think it's probably helpful to know this going in. To be clear, this is spoiler free. I'm not going to say anything that really happens in this movie. I believe whether I like a movie or not, that people should go into a film knowing as little as possible, so everything that in the script is intended to be a surprise is actually a surprise when you sit there and watch it. So keep that in mind. This takes place between the original Alien, 1979 Alien, and Aliens, 1986. This is wedged in there somewhere. So this isn't much after every Alien movie you've seen, and it's not way before every Alien movie you've seen. It's kind of somewhere in the middle, chronologically speaking. Does it connect to the other Alien movies? Yeah, it does. I'll give that much away. It does. So stars Cailee Spaeny, who you may have known from Civil War very recently. She was the lead in Priscilla, which was very good. And she's probably, for me, the most recognizable person in the movie. And also David Jonsson is in it, and he plays... Well, okay, so here's the deal. Spaeny is if I'm saying that right. If not, I'm sorry. This takes place on a Weyland-Yutani mining colony somewhere out in space where the sun never shines, and it's just this dreary, oppressive, rainy, Blade Runner-y place minus all the high tech. Much more rustic and rusty. And she's looking to get, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. She's looking to get off the planet to go somewhere where it's sunny, where she and her brother, who's portrayed by Jonsson, live. And it is quickly revealed, and I'm not going to say much about beyond this, quickly revealed that Jonsson is actually a robot, or whatever they call them in the alien world, one of the androids who has been programmed to protect her by her late father, because her parents are gone because they died relating to working on a mining colony. So she's trying to get off this world and go somewhere else. It's very difficult. And she meets up with her friends, and they have a plan to find this abandoned ship that has been seen orbiting the planet because it has what they need to basically go very, very far away and make a break for it and get out of this life and go somewhere better. So that's the whole idea of this film. It's almost like a heist or a caper movie in some very broad swath of things, in that they're trying to pull off this thing they're not supposed to do so they can go somewhere and get what they want. So what winds up happening, and again, this is about as much as I'm going to tell you, is things don't quite go right in this plan to find this ship and get out of there, and they wind up coming up against the titular aliens that we know and love from all the other films in this series. So I am not a giant fan of these films, and other people who are. I haven't seen all of them. I've seen Aliens. I saw Alien 3, but I don't remember much about it. I saw the 2 Ridley Scott prequels, which I liked okay, but I don't really know all of the mythology, and I don't really particularly care. Like, I'm not super, when little nods show up in these movies, I don't always get it, and I'm not super excited about them, and I'm not really against them. So when I saw the trailer for this, it didn't look like much. The trailer initially to me looked like, okay, it's the greatest hits of the first 2 Alien movies, and everybody's younger and hotter. That's basically the way things are made in Hollywood these days. Any kind of sequel or prequel or remake, let's just do everybody's younger and hotter, and it's pretty much all the things you remember from that first movie done again, so you can be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, that makes me think about that other movie. So so I didn't really love this. It's very well made for the most part. It's very well made. Cool atmosphere, cool sci-fi corridors, cool effects for the most part, creepy, well done, suspenseful for the most part, and it is a decent sci-fi horror action thriller. If that's what you're looking for, this absolutely delivers on that. If you're like me and you don't have a gigantic torch burning for these films, and you respect and like the first Alien and Aliens, and you don't want to just see that referenced and repeated over and over again, this film has a little bit less to offer you. So it does do what I kind of thought it was going to do. The main idea here is it's a bunch of like 20-something. If you ever want to see an alien film that was cast entirely with 20-somethings, this is the movie for you as well. It's a bunch of 20-something street kids, more or less, a couple of which have very thick British accents. And I'm not one of those people who's like, I can't listen to that. I need subtitles if they speak in British. Not at all. I'm a huge fan of British film and TV and music, and I know all the accents, and I rarely have a problem. But at least in the theater I was sitting in, the way the sound mix combined with the accents of 2 of the characters, that was very thick, like I want to say Cockney or something accents, and very mumbly and low in the mix. And I'm just like, well, I trust the film's going to progress without me knowing everything these guys say. I guess it's probably going to be able to continue to be comprehensible despite me not understanding a damn word of what some of these guys say in some of these scenes. The film does get very cool and very creepy and very interesting, and the audience was reacting to it. But at one point, it just sort of does become, okay, well, this is just like Alien again. Down to lifting one of the big lines from Aliens is repeated in this film. One of some very clear references to Aliens, some very clear. Now, some people think of them as they're homages, they're tributes, they're Easter eggs. To me, they take me out of the movie because they make me think of a different movie. When somebody picks up a weapon from one of the other movies and does something very similar to one of the other ones, I'm like, okay, well, now I'm thinking about a different film. And when you lift one of the biggest lines from another film, I'm now thinking about that other film, and I'm thinking about how much better that other film is. Maybe be your own movie. Maybe don't try to just do the same things over and over again. And I say this all the time. We've crossed a line at some point where screenwriters went from being these people who had lived life and had all of these experiences with worlds and wars and cultures and art and all kinds of things, and they brought that in, or even the history of all these things, and they brought that into filmmaking. Now it just feels like it's fans of a film or a franchise just regurgitating what they've already watched 100 times. You went from people who lived all this life to people who've watched the most popular films of the last 30 or so years over and over and over and over and over again, and all we get is a version of that back again. And for some people that's cool, but for me I'm just like, well, yeah, but that other movie already did this. So this movie does do some things that I've never seen before. Now, again, I haven't seen every entry in this series, and I did read something today where a certain creature that shows up in this film, they said was similar to a creature in another film, so maybe that's true. It was an interesting idea. It is one of those films that kind of feels like it's over and then keeps going. And again, it really does lift pretty heavily from some of the movies. But that was only after a point. Like up to a certain point, I'm like, oh, this is its own film. And it's interesting. They do show you, the film starts off with a little thing. Sting, spoiler free here. Starts off with a little thing. And then we get credits. And then we pick up with the Cailee Spaeny character in her story. There's a period of time that we realize has passed between that opening and the body of the film. When this was over, I thought back and I'm like, I think I might have preferred a movie that was about that period we didn't find out about. Because all that stuff that's sort of being hinted at and then is sort of discussed as already having happened, that might have made a more interesting film. It probably would have made a far less commercial film because it would have been about people being scientists and studying things and procedures and all kinds of stuff. But it could have been a much more interesting moral, philosophical, whatever movie than this ultimately became, which was just like another Alien film or like a ride, basically. So again, I'm not going to say this wasn't well made. The cast, most of the cast I didn't find very interesting. I thought Spaeny was good and Jonsson was good in what he did, multifaceted as it was, but the rest were pretty forgettable. Pretty small cast in this anyway. And there's a really big thing that happens in this that I did not expect was going to happen. And I really don't want to get into it, what it is, because it should be a fun surprise. But let me say, there's a character in this film whose face is pretty much entirely CGI. Their head is pretty much entirely CGI. And it's terrible. Like, it's awful. Like, it's hard to look at. I'm like, this is terrible. And I've seen things like this in other movies where a giant Hollywood film does something like this, and then somebody with a YouTube channel and a free program runs a process to do deep faking or something, and they make it look 1,000 times better than the Hollywood movie. And you're like, how did it look like this? Like, that character, I think, could have been done differently. I think that character could have been a different character, let's say, and would have worked just as well. It's just that this film really wants to have callbacks and things like that. I really don't want to say much, and probably that is saying too much if you haven't seen the film. Hopefully you watch these things after you've seen it and you're like, that guy's an idiot, or I really agree with him quite a bit. So the film was very interesting, very well shot, but overall, in the end, by the time it got to the end, and again, when they finally dispatched the final alien in this film, it's done in such like a sloppy way. I wasn't 100% sure of what just happened. Like, I know that, okay, well, that just happened. The alien isn't around anymore. Not to give anything away, because I hate to tell you this, pretty much every one of these movies ends with, the alien being dispatched, or the last alien being dispatched. When it happens, I'm just like, I'm sitting there trying to figure out how did what just happened occur? Like, I see the end result, but how did that just happen? It was really weird. A couple instances of really not good special effects, but otherwise really good special effects. I wouldn't mind more of these films. I wouldn't mind more with this character, but I really wish some Alien sequel would just take its own path. And just that's kind of what I liked about Prometheus and what was it, Covenant or whatever. As much as I enjoyed those, or to whatever degree, they felt like they were different. They existed in the Alien universe, but it wasn't exactly the same thing all over again. So your mileage may vary. No, a lot of people are really liking this. A lot of people, I think, just want more of that vibe. And I've never been one to be like that, where decades later, I don't need a band to get back together. I don't need a TV show to come back. I don't need to have one more time with a cast or a sequel. If it's not going to be good, if it's not going to be somewhat original and not just feel like it's just hitting all the beats and buttons of the original again to satisfy that itch of seeing one more time, I wish these could go in another direction. But they're commercial films that cost an incredible amount of money, and their best interest is to give the audience what it wants. But unfortunately, that seems to be that it's more of the same. So again, most people seem to be liking this quite a bit, so your mileage may vary. Let me know what you thought, but I think it was a passable matinee, but it's nothing I ever need to see again. Alien Romulus.